Earthlings, welcome to another Still Alive with myself and Ronnie here. So welcome all the Earthlings and the Martians and the Venusians. I was thinking this is teeing you up for one of your dirty jokes, Ronnie, but what would you call somebody from Uranus?
Well, I don't know. A bloody nuisance if they were stuck up there.
They'd be a bit cold, wouldn't they? Yeah. the many layered people. It's funny, isn't it? You know, the number of schoolboy jokes that have come out of Uranus before they changed the pronunciation. Yeah.
Well, it's only the Americans that changed the pronunciation. As far as I'm aware, the British pronunciation is still Uranus, isn't it?
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's the Americans that didn't want it to sound like something else. I've always thought it was.
Well, I suppose British humour is a little bit more kind of carry on in the gutter, isn't it, sort of thing. So, right, okay then. Well, people, welcome to the show, and as you can see, we are still alive. As the two Ronnies used to say, Ronnie, we've got a packed show tonight. But before we do that, putting on my best Spike Milligan voice, happy birthday to you, squashed tomatoes and stew, bread and vegan butter in the gutter. Happy birthday to you. So it was your birthday about 3 or 4 days ago?
It was on Saturday. Yes, my birthday on Saturday. I had a nice day actually. The reason I went to a fundraiser for a lovely place called the Farm Animal Rescue Sanctuary, which is a vegan-run sanctuary for farmed animals, mainly sheep, and they had this vegan afternoon high tea fundraiser in Birmingham, which was very enjoyable.
So 21 again, Ronnie.
I don't want to lie, 22 actually.
Yeah, you are looking a bit 22-ish. Yeah.
Thanks everyone for your birthday wishes.
Yeah, you actually had a fundraiser. Did it do well?
I did my own fundraiser for another lovely sanctuary called Beneath the Wood, which is they got a variety of animals there, but mainly pigs. Sanctuary in Wales, and they made me fairly recent. They made me a patron, which I was quite chuffed about because it's normally these big TV stars that are made patrons of places, isn't it? Rather than.
Does that mean you got to give them money though? Is it?
Well, I mean, I do donate to them, as I do to quite a number of sanctuaries. But it's more that it's more fundraising. It's more to help them raise funds, and that was what I made a video for my birthday to do that. People can become something called a piggineer, where they give £2.50 a month or more if they like, and it's a scheme to raise money to feed the pigs. So I was encouraging people to do that.
Well, it's really interesting you said that because I saw your thing and it said become a piggineer. I read it as a pigeoner for some reason.
A pigeon. Yeah. I think that's a different sanctuary, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. Okay. Well, we've got people tuning in on YouTube, but there's also a couple on Facebook. So the usual thing, folks, is that if you want to be involved with the interactive chat, then my YouTube is the best place for that. If you do comment on Facebook, we will see it, and so we will be able to answer it. It's just that you won't see anybody else's response to you. And then the usual caveat about anybody at all, feel free to chat away and put your comments in the chat box because we don't pay to have them put on the screen, or we don't charge to put them on the screen. So fear not, assuming that you're fearful of that issue. So, Ronnie, going back to this, hey, Carolyn, Carolyn published my 7th interview with her yesterday. I know I'm going for double figures. It must be some kind of record or something. So Ronnie, we've got 4 things essentially to chat about, and I think we're probably going to start with Viva. Is that right? You want to start with that?
Yes, yeah. Viva did something that was called a stunt, which took place in London. I think you got yeah, and it's to do with this kind of this sort of website or kind of web. It's a section of their website that's set up. Are you an animal lover? And basically, was they had this trailer, and they had the bodies of a dog, a cat, and a pig hanging up on the trailer.
Oh, I can bring that up. I think.
Yeah,
This is the Express. So
and it was, of course, obviously,
true.
To really get people to think about it and to consider, is there really any difference between these three animals? I mean, people would be horrified at most people be horrified at dogs and cats being slaughtered for food, but at the same time they consume the bodies of pigs that have been slaughtered. Now it got a considerable amount of publicity, and I'm sure that there are people who will have gone vegan or will go vegan because of the publicity, and that's ultimately the aim of it. But it has caused controversy within the vegan stroke animal rights movement, because the dog and the cat, or the dead dog and cat were models, whereas the pig was the body of a real pig. And there's been a lot of pushback about that from the vegan stroke animal rights community, people not liking the fact that Viva used the body of a real pig as part of this.
Yeah, one thing I heard was the fact that this was the first of a few of these ones. Now, as I understand it, they purchased the dead body, and then the idea was to cremate the dead body afterwards. And then presumably, when they do it again, they're going to have to purchase another one.
I'm not sure that they are going to do it again. I think it might have been it might have been to launch this particular campaign, and that they'll be doing other types of actions in furtherance of the campaign. It could well be that they won't do this particular action again. But nevertheless, I think the fact that they used the body of a real pig is something to be discussed.
Well, our first reaction was exactly what Deb has just said. Couldn't they make a model of the pig too, which could be
exactly reused? Now they've got they've got on this this kind of website of theirs that's dedicated to this campaign. They've got an FAQ section where they deal with the reasons why they used the actual real pig. I don't know whether that's something that you can bring up, or are we going to go through that as a whole?
I thought we'd go through it, but we could go straight to that.
We go straight to that one. You see.
Now then, we're donate money. Okay, where is it? It did actually say, didn't it?
There. Why didn't you use?
Oh, that one there. Yeah.
That
okay.
One, yeah. That one. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's quite the writing's quite small here.
The kind of bottom line is that they're suggesting that the kind of pig would have wanted it, given the choice, to be, it's a kind of like, make my death mean something kind of thing. And so why this stunt? Why use a real dead pig? Because these attention-grabbing tactics are needed now more than ever, with factory farming and slaughter becoming more prevalent in Britain and worldwide. The dog and cat were replicas, and clearly so. The pig had to be real to have any effect. So we tried various routes to obtain the pig, which failed, and had the tough choice of whether to buy a dead pig from the meat trade. Even just calling it the meat trade is bad enough. we thought very long and hard about tactics from the animal's perspective, as we always do.
You see, the thing is that, the same argument can be made about the dog and the cat. If the dog and the cat were real, wouldn't that kind of be more effective? And I think I kind of don't really buy this, because I think you can create a replica of a dead pig that indeed looks very, very realistic, very realistic. Obviously,
yeah. Well, ironically, when you do see pigs like that, they do look a bit plasticky anyway.
Yeah, they do, and I think I think you see that this is. Were they not aware of the problems this would cause them from the movement? Were they not aware of the pushback they'd get from vegans about this? Because, I mean, for a start, vegans aren't going to like the fact that money was handed over to the, animal exploitation industry to buy the body of this pig. That's that's going to be the the first objection, isn't it? And I think there's a kind of other objection as well, and that is that is this disrespectful? Is this disrespectful? Because you see, say for instance, there was some kind of protest about the killing of humans, and as part of the protest, there's a float going along with the real dead body of a human hanging upside down on that float. Now, would that be considered appropriate? And my view is it wouldn't be. So why is it appropriate to use the real dead body of a pig? To me, there's no difference, you see. And I think this is, there's a kind of perhaps an element of speciesism here, although I'm quite sure it's not intended, but that we're treating the bodies of other animals differently than we would treat the body of a human.
Yeah, well, I mean, to get my interest, of course, is that there's quite a lot of sociology in this campaign. But they do, for example, mention all the way through the press and also in terms of what they say about their own campaign. Well, they call it a stunt, which is interesting, but they also say it was a shock. And as we know sociologically, this movement relies on moral shocks rather than networking. Other movements just rely on people talking to one another, whereas this movement tends to want to have these kind of graphic images and pictures. And it's as though I said before, in fact, I might have said yesterday on the Animal Rights Show, that we seem to have lost the kind of Tom Reagan ability to make the case for animal rights by just talking about the case for animal rights. We need to have a screen to point to say, look, isn't that cruel? That's abuse, right? We seem to have lost that skill that Reagan had, but they did say on purpose that the idea was to shock. But do you not buy the bit at the bottom, Ronnie, which is that the pig who had been killed by the meat industry, again using their own terminology, want to be butchered and eaten or used to help save other animals and then cremated? So they're suggesting in a utilitarian kind of way that the pig would have chosen this fate rather than to be eaten.
Well, it's very hard to it's very hard to kind of comment on that, isn't it? But I think it's going back. It's going back to two things. I mean, I think a realistic replica of a pig would have been just as effective. After all, they use models of the dog and cat. Why not use a real dog and a real cat? If they think that the real pig is going to attract more attention, then wouldn't the real body of a dog and real body of a cat attract more attention? But they haven't done that, you see. So I think using a replica body of a pig would have avoided all the kind of kickback they've got from really quite a large number of vegans, and of course that some of those people may not support Viva anymore because of this. No.
Well, they do address that part as well, because they do say that none of their supporters' money went into this. It was funded by.
So this Viva Campaigns Limited, that they say paid for the stunts and would have paid the meat industry for the body of the pig. How is that funded? I think people are still going to be very suspicious of this. And I think it's a shame, because I think, Viva do a lot of good, Viva do a lot of good stuff. Probably out of all the national organisations in the UK, Viva do the most, I would say, to promote veganism. There are one or two things they do that we'd have quibbles about. I mean, including this. But they are at the forefront, and just last year they started this scheme to try and get local activism going, to get people to support local vegan outreach groups and stuff like that, and all that's very good. So I think it's a shame that they've kind of rather sort of blotted their copybook through this, and will undoubtedly lose the support of some vegans through using the real body of a pig, when that was unnecessary. It was just unnecessary to do this. And once again, we have the example, and we've had several examples, fairly recently, over the past couple of years, maybe, of organisations like kind of sort of failing to take into the account what is going to be the reaction of the movement to what they do, and I think this was I think it was a mistake to use.
Do you think they're? I mean, they don't really go into it with great detail, but if you look, they do talk about the media. Would the media portray our point of view? And what they're getting at there is that they know that the media are looking for controversy. The media are looking for, sensationalism. They know how to play the media game. So therefore, a real dead pig would also feed into, because the media are also going to know that's a controversial thing to do, right?
I don't know what difference it would have made, to be honest, if you'd had a realistic, model of the pig.
I bet you guarantee that if you looked at their press release, they'd emphasize that we're going to use a real dead pig. I bet you would.
But you see, had they used a real cat and a real dog, then it could be argued that would have caused even more controversy. But they didn't do that.
Well, that'd have been a step too far, I think, is what we're talking about.
I don't know. I think it would have gone just as well.
Did you have the same reaction to, if you remember, Animal Equality, when they were a grassroots thing in Madrid before they become a bit of a sold out kind of, multinational? They used to do that thing in Madrid where they used to hold the bodies of several dead other animals, right? And so,
yes,
did you? Because a lot of people push back against that in the way that you're pushing back against this.
Yes, and I mean that still happens. I mean the National Animal Rights Day and We Stand for the Animals. These two events that take place. It took place last summer. I think with National Animal Rights Day, it was like a worldwide event and took place in about 100 cities throughout the world. And on quite a few of those events, I think people were holding the bodies of dead animals. And these were animals that died at sanctuaries, for instance. And there is there is controversy over that. A lot of people don't like that. I mean, I spoke at a National Animal Rights Day event in Birmingham, where the organizer of the event refused to do it. She said, "No, I personally don't agree with having the bodies of the animals. So the event that I organise, it's going to be people holding posters and placards." And that's what happened. She did it her own way, and obviously it was good that they were kind of happy for her to do that. So it is something. It is that is controversial as well.
Hmm. Do you then buy into the argument that by extension photographs are in a similar category, or is it?
No, I don't think. I don't think photographs are the same as having. I mean, we see. We see photographs in the media, don't we? Kind of all the time of of people that have been killed, don't we? And scenes of kind of killing of.
Well, usually actually the media are very careful about what they
Yeah, I
do.
think they're careful. I mean, you don't really get anything too graphic, do you? But I think that would be regarded differently as kind of driving around the streets with a trailer with a dead human hanging upside down from the trailer, wouldn't it? If you see what I mean.
Yeah. Debbie's saying that the photographers see what I've got in mind. Actually, everyone is if we remember back to the Vietnam War, that famous picture of the kind of very small kind of girl about 8.
Yes.
Yeah, a very famous one, right?
Yes,
In
that's
fact,
right. Yes.
I don't think it was just still photograph. I think there's actually video of her
Yes.
running past, right? And so obviously it's the same kind of utilitarian calculus going on. I can do more good by filming this and then showing it than intervening and do something, right?
Yes. I mean, obviously, except in the death of the pig, nobody could have intervened. I just think there are more negatives. I think the same effect could have been obtained without using the dead body.
Well, I'm sure Viva then would push back at that last point and just say, well, look, as you said, we couldn't save the pig, but we could make their life more meaningful than what would normally happen, which would be that they would just be eaten.
But the thing is, you could say the same about the dead body of a human, couldn't you? Who'd been executed or something like that.
Well, nobody's going to eat them.
No, nobody's going to eat them, but you could, rather than, but it would still be that, hanging up the body of the human would have been, would be regarded as disrespectful, wouldn't it? You see, it's a bit like we seem to have different values in terms of campaigning for human rights than we do for campaigning for animal rights or animal liberation. And we see this, in other ways, these naked protests, for instance, that so often seem to happen, outside establishments associated with the oppression of other animals, for instance. Now, were there naked protests taking place, outside or even inside establishments associated with the oppression of humans? Say there was a naked protest outside, let's say someone had an idea of holding a naked protest outside a concentration camp for humans. Would that be regarded as appropriate? That wouldn't be seen as appropriate, would it? So why are people doing it with regard to other animals? And to me, there's an element of speciesism there that we're kind of regarding the oppression of other animals rather differently to the oppression of humans in terms of the kind of how we protest against
well,
those
I mean,
things.
we're really into areas like the sexual politics of meat now, the male gaze, because it's obviously mostly female identified individuals who are doing those things. And so, again, people are playing into the proclivities that people have. Women know that if they take their clothes off, men are going to look at them. Right.
But why not take your clothes off outside? Say there's a detention centre, for immigrants where the conditions are particularly awful, as is the case, right, in many of them. Would it be appropriate for there to be a naked protest outside there? Well, no. You don't never get that happening, do you? So why for other animals?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know whether, maybe in the history of campaigning, that kind of thing has happened.
Never heard of it, and I'm quite sure
back to Viva here, though, Ronnie.
Yeah.
Not to be disrespectful or graphic, but were photographs of people that were lynched in the southern states, good or bad, for the civil rights movement? Because, I mean, those were shocking images, weren't they?
Yes, but I think there's a difference between, having a photograph of someone who's been lynched, saying that this is what happened and is it awful, than kind of taking the body of someone who'd been lynched and kind of having them lynched on a trailer driving through a town. That would have been regarded as disrespectful, wouldn't it? You see, that's the difference. So we're applying different values to the.
It's like there's an element of line drawing.
Yes,
here, isn't there?
Yeah. And so.
Sorry, Ronnie, go on.
No. Carry on. I'm just saying that it's this differentiation between.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you a movement question about this thing about, are you an animal lover? Now, I wonder why it is. Well, I've got my own ideas, but I mean, do you know why there's so much emphasis on that kind of thing nowadays? Because I think it had been. I don't think anybody would have done this a few years ago. Are you an animal lover? Because they would want to emphasize the kind of, again, Tom Reagan type thing. It's not about being an animal lover. It's about being an animal respecter. So there's been a return to this more what I would regard as welfare language. So why is that? Have you got any ideas?
No, it's kind of hard to say. I think there's something to be gained by kind of using the affection that people have for animals in their homes, to talk to them about how animals on farms are individuals in the same way as the animals that they care so much for that they have in their homes. I think there's a.
Well, I think we've got to be careful here, Ronnie, because this affection that people have for cats.
Well, the fact that they regard the fact that they see those animals as individuals. You see, they see those animals as individuals. They've all got their own personality. They're all. They're all different.
And you know what it's like, though. They see dogs as status symbols. They see dogs as guard dogs. They chain up in backyards, and all that.
Yes,
so,
it's not everyone who has, who has a dog treats that dog properly. But there are a lot. I mean, for instance, we do. Yeah. I was just going to say, we do stalls, our local vegan group, we do stalls at dog rescue events. And kind of a lot what we're trying to do is to say to people, look, these are people that care about dogs. They rescue dogs, they rescue the dogs, the benefit of the dogs. And to talk to people about, that all these dogs are individuals. Well, the cows and the pigs and the chickens and all these, they are all individuals as well. So to try to get them to see these animals as individuals, so that they have a different attitude towards them. And I think you can use the fact that they see the animals in their homes as individuals to help with that.
There is another view, which again would be sociological, which is the fact that you've got pet animal, right? Now, we tend to orient towards other animals in a functionalist way. And you can see this by the way that people talk to vegans all the time. Well, what are they for? If we didn't use them for that, what we're going to use them for? Or if we didn't use them for that, then they'd be useless. So we've got a very strong functionalist orientation towards other animals. And some we simply use as pets. And when we use them as pets, there's different types of rules and norms and values associated. We give them individual names. We see them as individuals and everything else. But they're still being used by society, right?
Oh, yes. I mean, that's absolutely true. I mean, there should be no such thing as pets. I mean, these animals should never have been used, but because I mean, the history of dogs, for instance, is a history of wolves being taken and bred into all sorts of shapes and sizes of dogs to be used.
Which is very deleterious to their health and everything.
Yeah, but it was all connected in the past with the oppression of other animals. I mean, wolves were bred into dogs to be used for hunting, and to be used for herding in almost all cases. And now it's only in kind of more recent times that you've got them kind of being used as so-called pets, and you've got the sort of exploitation of them, through through organizations like Crufts, and the people where they've been bred in an even more severe way that's caused them health problems. That's a really quite recent in the history of dogs, because really the reason we have all these different breeds of dogs was because they were bred that way in order to be of more use for the oppression of other. I mean, like a dachshund, for instance. Dachs is German for badger. They were used to hunt badgers. You see, no, they're not used to hunt badgers now, but that's why they're that shape, to go down a badger hole after a badger.
Yeah, and all the terriers, of course,
and the terriers as well. And then you've got the shepherd dogs. They were used for herding. German shepherd. They were,
and guard dogs, famously.
Yeah.
So your guard dog. I mean, Joanna is saying, isn't it companion animals? But the point is, that's the use that we put them to.
Well, I mean, there's no justification. The only justification really for having an animal in your home is for that animal to be a rescued animal,
like a refugee.
And they're like a refugee, yeah. And you just kind of you have that animal in your home primarily for the benefit of the animal. But the problem is people have them primarily for their own benefit. We've seen this over with COVID, where people are like, "Oh, I'm a bit bored because I can't go out so much, so I'll get a puppy or I'll get a kitten." And then, of course, when the crisis is over, they go out again. These animals are being disposed of, aren't they? And there's a crisis with the rescue centres, because people have had those animals for their own selfish purposes and not to help the animal.
Yeah. Okay. So going back then to my sociological point, what the other construction of this is that rather than pet animal, and that's going to create a shock, it's just well, yeah, but that's how we use the cat. That's how we use the dog, and the animal is a food animal.
Yes,
Specialists call that pig a food animal. That's the function of the pig. The function of the pet is to be petted. So in other words, the kind of shock value has disappeared if you see it in a more sophisticated cultural way.
Yes, yeah. Yes, I mean, what I'm trying to think of what other words they could have used there instead of those, because I don't, obviously I don't like,
John is saying I don't like that. I mean, like we've moved away from the word pets quite a lot. From in the 80s, we moved away from that. And as you said, normally people then start talking about companion animals, and then people started talking about animal companions, and then people talked about refugees, right? To really kind of put that kind of, we're not doing it for us, we're doing it for them type focus on things. But generally speaking, if you think about, Britain, the nation of animal lovers, they have their pets for their own human-centric reasons, don't they? And they eat pigs the same for the same.
I think it's a complicated situation, because the overriding reasons, and most people have dogs and cats in their home, is for their own selfish purposes, to provide,
or as guards, or as companions.
It's to be used for the purposes of humans, which is why those animals were kind of sort of brought into the homes of humans in the first place, wasn't it? But I think it's a bit more. But I think kind of despite that there are a lot of these animals that are kind of still seen as by the people who've got them as individuals, and cared about as individuals by
because that is the way that pet is constructed in a species.
Yes, but you see, the point is that they're still aware of the individuality of those animals. you see. And if so someone's aware of the individuality of a dog and a cat, then there's a chance that you can get them to be aware of the individuality of other animals.
Do you remember when Reagan said, "It's as simple as this: if I knew you, I wouldn't eat you"? But it seems to me that I haven't seen many videos of the public reaction to this, what they call a stunt, but I'm not. It'd be interesting to see whether it works out the way that the campaigners think it is, because I tend to think
I think people will go vegan because of this, because I don't think something has to be, we'll look at this and there'll be aspects of this that we kind of, don't feel totally in accord with. But I don't think something has to be perfect in order to persuade.
No, but talk through the process of someone going vegan after seeing this.
Well, because it might make people think, that in general, people have an attitude towards like dogs and cats. These are animals that kind of, we should treat properly, for instance. And if we can, if this campaign can kind of, get people to think, well, in actual fact, like, pigs aren't really any different to dogs and cats, like in terms of their, their ability to feel and their existence as individuals. I
wanted to ask you about that, because do you think, because I saw in the press release, it was saying that basically kind of like showing people that the pig is just the same as the others. Now, I don't think that biologically, or in terms of pain, I don't think that is a great shock to anybody. It's culturally, they are different, right? Now, whether this could kind of get people to alter their cultural perception, when all three categories here on the lorry are other animals who are used by humans, but in different ways, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So in that sense, what are we asking people to do? Well, this use is okay, this use is okay, this use isn't okay.
But I don't think people are going to look at it in terms of use. They're going to look at it in terms of like, their horror at a dog or a cat being killed and strung up. And you see people kind of sleepwalk in a way, don't they? They kind of accept things as they are, even though there's huge inconsistencies in it. And I think sometimes something that jerks someone out of that, if you see what I mean, and makes them think, can be useful. And I think this is this could be said to fall into that category.
I think it's possible. What I would say though is that someone like historian Keith Thomas talked about privileged species. Now each kind of society have their privileged species, and they usually make them into pets, or they use them like the way that we use horses, for example, right? And we tend not to eat them, although there are slaughterhouses in Britain and in Ireland. There's 5 in Ireland that kill horses, right? And so we have this terribly kind of ambiguous relationship with other animals. But the bottom ground relationship is that we use them right across the board, whether we characterize them as pets or guards or status or food. It's all animal use.
Oh, I mean, yes, that's absolutely true. But I think there are some forms of use that are more serious than other forms. And if at least this can, persuade at least some people to no longer consume animal products, to no longer eat pigs, and to no longer eat the other animals that are used for food, then that is a big step in the right direction, or a big step in the good direction.
What's the criteria, Ronnie? What's the criteria that they're asking people to love the pig as well?
Well, I think that I would see this as Yeah, well, maybe to love the pig in the same way that perhaps they love the dog and the cat. To see pigs as individuals that are capable of feeling and suffering the same way as the dog and the cat that those people know
And
are
so
capable of
you
feeling and suffering.
can then, oh, just think about this. You could imprison a piglet and regard them as a pet as well.
Well, I don't that people aren't going to. I don't think the idea is for people to look at it that way. I think the idea is for people to kind of, you know, understand that pigs are individuals, and other animals that are used for food are individuals in the same way that the dog and the cat, they know very well are individuals are, and
Yeah,
to
but
get
they're
them
not though.
differently.
Yeah, I mean the thing is the bottom line of that, Ronnie, is that they're not. Culturally, they're in a different category. And
Yeah,
as I've said in a couple of my
the bottom line of this is this campaign going to cause people to go vegan? And I believe it will. I believe it's going to. Yeah, we can talk about, you know, these problems with dogs and cats being used as well, albeit in a different way to pigs and other animals used for food. Yes, they're all used. Is this campaign going to cause people to at least stop consuming animal products? And I believe it will. How many it will cause to do that, I don't know. But I believe it kind of will have that effect. I mean, Viva claim it already has that effect, has had that effect. I believe it will have that effect. I mean, we've had an increase over the years of the number of people that have become vegan, or at least the number of people that have no longer consume animal products. And has that been as a result of absolutely perfect campaigns that would go along, that wouldn't kind of use words that we would regard as not being perfect? No, it hasn't. It hasn't been.
well,
Like,
I'm not asking for
no, but you see
perfection.
that.
I'm just asking for
Yeah,
what we
yeah.
think
I
is
mean, we can.
the
Yeah,
thought process.
yeah. I mean, I think we can. You know, there are things we can have to say about this in ways that it's kind of not. Perhaps it could have been done better. But nevertheless, I still think it's going to be effective. It's going to be
Well,
effective.
I'm not particularly here to slag this campaign off,
No,
Ronnie.
no, no. I know. I mean, like, I totally understand about what you're saying. Yes, of course, dogs and cats are used by humans and shouldn't be used by humans. No other animals should be used by humans for our own purposes. Of course, no. And I think that we can point out things about this campaign that we would do differently, or whether we would do a campaign ourselves like this at all. I don't know. No. I mean, I don't tend to campaign myself in that sort of way. Like the shock thing, I kind of don't do that really. But I'm prepared to accept the people that do that have been successful in persuading people to become vegan.
Would you have used the same language about animal loving and stuff?
No, I don't use that language. I don't use that language at all. Because
see, from an animal rights point of view, it's not about love, is it? It's about respect.
It's about respect. Yes, yeah. And referring to Britain as a nation of animal lovers, I really dislike that because it's untrue for a start. Because although when that's used,
isn't this saying you should be, and you also should be in relation to pigs? Isn't that what it's saying?
I think it's trying to get people to look at pigs as individuals in the same way as they look at the cats and dogs they have in their home, and the same and not just the dogs and cats they have in the home, but because people see those animals as individuals and have affection for those animals as individuals, then that goes out to cover all dogs and cats. People are outraged, like are outraged that in some parts of the world that dogs and cats are killed for food, aren't they?
What if somebody trots up and says, Ronnie,
Yeah.
what if somebody trots up and says, actually, I'm not an animal lover? Does that then, in that case, tuck in?
Well, no, I mean, if somebody, it depends on the situation. Yes, I know. I know. If you're banking everything on someone being an animal lover or regarding themselves as an animal lover, then obviously you're going to have problems with someone that doesn't consider themselves to be one. But I think this is aimed at most people in this country have some kind of affection for dogs and cats, because most people would be horrified, at
Well, of course, which is what
cats.
explains that Mary Bale case, isn't it?
Well, yes.
The woman who threw the cat into
the
a
woman
wheelie.
that threw the cat in the wheelie bin.
But I mean, she presumably is not an animal lover. So is that a free pass for Mary Bale now?
Well, no, of course not, because it's not.
So how do you appeal to Mary Bale? That
it's not based on. It's not based on that.
But if you said to, but the point is, if you said, I mean, Mary Bale, you shouldn't have done that because you should love cats.
I think there are some people you can't appeal to, and I think we have to kind of realize that, and that we have to be the ones in charge, and those people have to do what we say. Because I think there are some people
put them in jail.
Well, just make it so they can't harm other animals. If we were in charge, then we hopefully could do that. But
right, well, it's coming up to 10 to, so I want to move on, if I may, to the Temple Grandin thing, Ronnie, because this is related, it seems to me anyway, to what we've talked about already. Because you've got, again, this idea about privileged species, and you've also got the idea of the wrong species, right? So let's see if we can make some sense out of this.
I run a small dog meat farm, and I was wondering if there was any tips you might have. I have Labradors that won't go in the meat.
Now, what, a dog meat?
Yes. It's meat from dogs for people.
Okay, so you're making food for dogs?
No. It's for people. It's a small farm.
Okay.
We farm dogs, and I've used a lot of your methods for the slaughterhouse, and I just I have problems with.
And you're trying to get the pigs to go in?
No, I'm trying to get the Labradors to go into the chute. I think that maybe it's shiny on the floor.
You're not eating dogs, are you?
Yes.
No,
yes.
I'm not going to sign that.
What?
You're eating dogs?
We do it humanely. It's ethical.
Is there a problem with that?
Yeah, there's a problem with that. I can't.
But
that's,
you do a lot of things that are.
No, I'm sorry. No, I just can't have anything to do with that.
Oh.
It's too hot an issue.
Right. So there's a lot in that little clip.
Yes.
There, isn't there?
Yeah.
I mean, what's your initial reaction to that?
Well, my initial reaction is kind of, is the reason she refused to be part of it to do with the fact that she considers dogs to be somehow different to the animals that are normally slaughtered for food, or is
clearly, yes. I mean, it's the wrong species.
Well, you see, at the end of it, she said it's too hot an issue.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And is it because she's worried about what other people are going to think of her? And how what her position is going to be in the views of other people, because right at the end she says it's too hot an issue. It may well be that she kind of does consider it to be different as well, of course, and kind of most people would do, wouldn't they? But kind of what matters is is kind of what's said after this. You see, it kind of there's a sense in which this has ended too early, because then the next thing you say is, yes, but why are you so opposed to this when you're not opposed to the slaughter of other animals for food? And then to have a conversation based on that. but it doesn't go into that, does it?
Well, I think she. I mean, I do agree that that kind of follow-up would have been interesting to see.
Yes.
But I think there's some hints to it already, and it goes back to kind of privileged species, but also functionality. In other words, she can't really initially grasp what all this is about.
No.
Because it can't be about putting dogs through slaughterhouses, because that just doesn't happen, and so it can't be that.
No.
And so she automatically kind of just flips back and say, well, you can't get the pigs to go in, and she says that in a very very kind of managerial kind of, oh, you can't get the pigs to go in, but oh no, we're talking about Labradors, and then her face kind of drops, right? So the idea of pigs going in, that's not a problem. The idea of Labradors going in, then that's outrageous, because we've got a functional view of those two types of.
But then you use this to challenge that, don't you? You question the person as to why they hold the views they do, and to say, well, why is it that you differentiate between dogs and pigs? Why is it? You tell me. You know, you're in the spot now to explain that to me.
Well, people tell that to us all the time, Ronnie. They say, well, because they're pets and their food. That's what they say.
Yeah, but you go deeper into it and say, yes, but why are you regarding those animals as food and to be slaughtered when we don't need to do that? We don't need to kill these animals that are just as aware and sentient as the dog and the cat that you're so fond of. We don't need to do it. So how do you justify doing it when we don't need to? What is your moral justification for doing something like that?
Well, her entire career has been based on welfare, which is basically So, as usual, it's kind of, well, this is going to happen, so how can we make it better?
Well, it's not going to happen. It's only going to happen because people consume animal products.
Yeah, but that's a given with her.
Well, but then that is still no different than dogs being. But there's lots of things that kind of are wrong with the world, say in terms of the oppression of other people. So are those things given as well, and we can't do anything about like people starving, so we won't bother to do anything about it. You know what I mean? It's no different. That just because that is the situation doesn't mean that we can't do anything about it, and we can do something about it.
Well, I guess that's to do with personal motivation and everything. But in you see, like if they'd have said, "Oh yeah, we're talking about pigs that won't go in," I mean that was a language. Oh, they won't go in. In other words, to the shoot. In other words, they won't go in. They won't volunteer for slaughter. That's what they've effectively been saying here. Yeah. Now she would have waxed lyrical for 20 minutes about how to get pigs to go in.
Yes, I'm sure she would. But you see, it's still unethical. The thing is to pin her down on the ethics and say, yeah, okay, so lots of people do it, but is it right? Is this morally right? Doesn't matter how many people do it. Is it morally right? And she's not going to be able to say that it is she? If we don't need to slaughter all these animals.
I think what she would do is probably not talk about the ethics and talk about their purpose.
But you make her talk about the ethics and say, no, let's talk about the ethics of this. How do you justify this morally? And that's what we've got to do all the time.
Well, that's interesting because in the book Slaughterhouse by Gail Aisnitz, she interviewed slaughterers, and one of them said, well, someone's got to do it, and so why shouldn't it be me? Right. And so that first premise was faulty, that someone's got to do it. It was just an assumption that they had made.
Yes.
And basically what they were saying was, given the fact that there is all this demand for flesh, that means that some other animals are going to go through slaughterhouses and they're going to be killed. And then it switched to, so why shouldn't it be me doing that job and not somebody else?
Yeah.
But
I mean,
but
it
was a given. The actual use part of it was a given, wasn't it? And so this is why we have to focus on animal use.
Yes, but then you have to challenge that. You have to challenge that given. That's the thing. No, just because there's a demand doesn't mean someone has to supply it. You know, there's a demand for, you know, people to be hit people, isn't there? You know, to kill people for other people. That doesn't mean that. So the person that the person that carries out the hit job, they're still taken to court and prosecuted for murder. They can't stand up and says, well, look, you know, there was a demand for it, so somebody was going to do it, can they? It's no different.
This comment, I'm not quite sure who's that's aimed at, whether it's me or you. It's social conditioning. Well, I'd agree with that, obviously, as a sociologist. Not sure what you're trying to show here exactly. Well, I suppose we're showing things like speciesism. We're showing things like
no, it wouldn't work. That wouldn't work in countries where dogs and cats are used for food, because they regard the dog, the cat, and the pig as all the same, wouldn't they? So that wouldn't work. I mean, that's specifically aimed at a society where people regard dogs and cats as different to pigs. And no, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work in a country like that.
If the critique was about animal use, which doesn't seem to have come up in this stunt or whatever,
no,
then that would change. It seems to me the conversation a little bit. In the sense that this is why I think the animal lover construct is a bit confusing. I think it gets in the way of what we want to say. In a sense, but you know, the temple granding thing is really interesting in the sense that it was the mental switch that she couldn't handle.
Oh, absolutely, yes, yeah.
And so somebody asking where it comes from. So it is from the you know, the kind of the fake organic dog meat. It's a kind of spoof kind of company, isn't it? Right.
Yeah.
And so
yes.
What's it called? Somebody will know.
It's Elwood's, I think, isn't it? If it's the same one. I don't know whether there's more than one.
No, that's right. It came up on the screen.
Elwood's, yes, yeah, because that's normally someone in the street promoting dog meats, isn't it?
Yeah, and so it's interesting because they have created this kind of mental kind of confusion or whatever in speciesist minds, because they're confusing. Everybody's going along going, okay, well, we know what the function of food animals is, and now what you've done is you've mischaracterized dogs here, right? They're in the wrong category, which is why you often get animal advocates very kind of tragically making racist comments about those cultures where dogs are killed. But for them, eating dogs, to the extent that it happens, it's not as much as people say.
No,
but eating dogs is the same as eating pigs to them.
Yes,
it's just the fact that, you know, dogs are food animals over there, pigs are food animals over here, and it's all to do with animal use.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same with countries that eat whale meat, isn't it? And are criticised for killing whales.
Yes. Well, I used to make the point about Japan in that sense, because foxes are kind of you know, spiritual and kind of, you know, sacred in Japan. They're kind of revered foxes, and look what we do to foxes, and yet we criticize what the Japanese do to dolphins and whales. Okay, so these are just, you know, animal use is culturally different. So I want to lighten the mood a little bit, Ronnie, and show you the this gorilla one before we go on to the last one. Now, I'm probably going to show you this twice. So just let's just watch this one through, and then we can talk about it, and then maybe play it again.
The cage is making a run for it.
I love the silverback was kind of like, fuck that, I'm not, kind of, you know. But so there's lots in that. At first, I didn't quite understand what was going on. So the setup seems to be that they are. This is being filmed from the other side of the gorilla compound in some
Yes.
kind of zoo, right? And in
Yeah.
fact, I think the person who talks is a zoo employee because they know the name of the individual who is making a run for it. And then you've got all the humans there, you know, the kind of paragons of our species, but behind this shatterproof glass, presumably.
Yes.
Because at first I didn't realize there was glass there. I was thinking, blimey, how come all these humans and these gorillas are sat together, you know, waiting for the rain to stop, right? That's what I thought was happening first. And then the other bit that I love is the very kind of human element of them grimacing when they're starting to get wet, and they're squeezing against the wall to try to avoid the rain, but they're grimacing as they go. So there's loads in there, isn't there?
Well, absolutely, yes. And I wonder what sort of place that is. I mean, the little bit you can see of it looks quite barren, doesn't it? Oh, that's only a small part of it.
It does, yeah.
So yeah,
there seems to be quite a lot of these. I've seen on social media now a lot of these things where they do try to get these big glass partitions where people can kind of be very, very close to other animals, but the way the humans behave is absolutely appalling. You know, they're kind of taking the piss. Usually, they're pulling faces, they're screaming and shouting. You know, and if anything, it's the other animals who've got more dignity than the humans in these kind of settings.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just you know, it's just appalling. It's just, you know, and obviously, you know, all these places need to be turned into, you know, if those animals can't be rehabilitated, you know, back to their natural environment, then these places need to be turned into sanctuaries, don't they? That's what should happen. Or the animals relocated to a better place, you know, as a sanctuary. That's what we need to do.
It makes you wonder what's going through the minds of all these people, because you can bet your bottom dollar, Ronnie, that they all self-identify as animal lovers.
Yes, yeah, that's probably true, and of course, these animals here, the gorillas and other animals in zoos and safari parks, are used by people as a means of entertainment. People go there to, you know, for entertainment. Oh, let's go there. You know, this is another afternoon.
As you can see, they take their kids, so that's cultural and generational transmission of speciesism.
Yes, it is. And it's done for entertainment. Oh, you know, what am I going to do this afternoon to you know, as a form of entertainment? Oh, let's go to the zoo, or let's go to the safari park. You know, and that's you know, that's what it's all about. You know, it's just use of those animals in another way, isn't it?
Yeah, there's right at the end you do see, because the great apes move, then these great apes just start kind of almost like, oh, it's all over. It's kind of like, oh, the show's over kind of thing, right? There doesn't seem to be any profound respect. There doesn't seem to be any appreciation of the other. There doesn't seem to be much going on. They're just kind of empty people gawping.
Yes. Yeah, they're just gone there just for a bit of fun because they've got nothing else better to do. Fundamentally, you know, that's what's happened. And once again, you know, it's disrespect. It's disrespect, isn't it, as well? You know, that's happening there.
Yeah. So I'll run it through again so we can see all those points, as it were, after we've discussed them. Again.
The cage is making a run for it.
Another thing as well is the fact that all the three female apes or gorillas, they're all nursing mothers.
Yes.
Presumably the silverback, that's his harem, I suppose. That's the setup.
Probably so. Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all the humans there just going, entertainment over, Ronnie. You know.
Oh yes, I know. Yeah.
Right. So our last item is going to be this exchange. Now, this is interesting from my point of view. It's the Piers Morgan thing, where he's talking to, I'm not sure who the animal advocate is, and then there's also somebody who seems to be pro ranching or obviously pro animal use. But it's right at the end, which I find the most fascinating. So let's have a look at this and see what we make of this one then, Ronnie.
Vegan food apart from die-hard vegans. I never meet a healthy-looking vegan, and I never meet one who doesn't yap on and on and on about being a vegan. You know, I like steak, but I don't talk about it 24/7.
I feel for the animals that are forced into gas chambers, who have their lives taken from them. Amazing plant-based options and alternatives that can give you that same taste, satisfaction, pleasure.
No, that's the thing, you see. It doesn't taste as good, Tommy, does it?
You know, if vegan and plant-based food was so great, they wouldn't go out of their way to try to make it taste like actual meat.
Let's stop it there, Ronnie, because we talked about this before we came on about this thing about it's not exactly the same.
No.
Totally overriding the morality of it and concentrating wholly on the taste, right?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's only a taste. And basically what's happened is animals are being slaughtered in their billions just to satisfy the taste of humans. It's not necessary for human survival, not necessary for human well-being to consume other animals. So why are we doing it? It's only being done for taste. And that's absolutely disgraceful and deplorable that all these animals are being killed just for a taste. And that's never emphasized enough. And it's not emphasized on this, in this exchange either, as we'll see, as we see the rest of it.
Yeah. One thing that always makes me think about this, when they talk about the taste, they say, well, the plant-based ones are not as good as the flesh ones. Like, by what percentage are they talking about? Are they talking about 5%?
I from what I remember of animal products, and this is a long time ago, I've been vegan 52 years. From what I remember of animal products, that I think that there are a lot of the vegan products, taste very much like the animal products as I remember them, to be quite honest.
I guess we wouldn't know, but I think the interesting part about that is the fact that we know that our palate becomes trained. We've spoken about this before. You know, that thing about most people don't like their first cigarette, most people don't like their first pint of beer and everything. So we do train our palates. So in some senses, if you then switch to wholly plant-based, there's a certain element of retraining going on.
Yes.
But it doesn't take that long. But even if you just starkly say they believe that the plant-based one is not as good as the flesh-based one, by how much? So all those rights violations are gonna be committed for 10% or something.
But you see, the thing is, it's very important to get away from the taste. You know, and I get this a lot at when I'm doing outreach, and the main thing is cheese. And you get someone going, I've tried the vegan cheese. I'm doing the voice. I tried the vegan cheese, but it doesn't taste the same as the cheese.
I thought that was your voice, Ronnie.
No, that's well, it is my voice doing their whingy bloody voice. And I say, yeah, but it's only a taste. You're talking about a taste. So, is it right that, other animals should be killed just for a taste? It's only a taste. And, you'll get used to the taste of the vegan alternative, or just stop eating, just don't eat it for a while and let your taste buds, You know, and I think it's really important to say that to people,
I
rather
think
than
it's a price
people
they
get
won't
into
pay, Ronnie.
people get into a conversation about, oh well, you know, have you tried this one and have you tried that one and have you tried this other one, because you might find that they taste a bit better than the ones you've been trying. And yeah, I suppose it's all right to say that, but I think it's really important to say, yeah, but what we're talking about is just a taste. And is it right that other animals should be killed just for a taste, because that is the only reason it's happening, right? You've got to get people to think about the morals of it. It's not just about, you know, the reason to switch to a vegan diet isn't because it tastes similar to a diet based on animal products, is it? You know, the reason to switch to a vegan diet is the morals and the ethics of it.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting because there's been some academic research on this, and there's a big pushback. A lot of people say, well, what has morality got to do with food, right? And so when they orient towards food, and you see this over and over again on TikTok comments, they say, I like meat, or I love meat. And of course, what's true of that is that nobody's doubting that they like and love these things, but that answers no moral questions.
No.
But they never direct any moral questions at it, because it's just their food choices as far as they're concerned.
No, but we have to direct moral questions at it. We have to that's what you've got to bring people back to, or bring people forward to, is that, you know, isn't about whether we can make vegan products taste the same as animal products. That isn't, you know, it's the fact that you don't eat the animal products. That the first thing you do is not to eat the animal products, and then after that you find vegan products that you like to eat. But the bottom line is you stop eating the animal products.
I'd go along with that, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the end of this.
So I think that proves the point. I don't believe in cruelty to animals as far as shoving chickens in cages or having animals live on feedlots their entire lives. So there's a solution to this. We can go back to American or maybe UK based for you guys farmers and ranchers that raise their livestock in a humane way. And if you're able to, instead of buying the stuff in the grocery store, go and find somebody that has a ranch or a farm and get your meat from that source.
Vegans are not against farmers. We're against animal cruelty. And at the end of the day, these animals still end up at the slaughterhouse with their throat slit. And so that's really where the problem lies. We make plant-based options taste like meat because we didn't give up meat because we didn't like the taste. We gave it up because we didn't want to see animals suffer.
Listen, I hear you. I don't like a lot of the animal cruelty that goes with the meat business, and that can certainly be worked on. But boy, I love eating meat, and no vegan's ever going to change my mind.
Okay, so I find that pretty fascinating in the sense that what you've got there is you've got an animal advocate. As I said, I don't know where she's from or what organization or whatever. And then also somebody who's pro-ranching, pro-farming. And then you've got Piers Morgan himself, all declaring to be against animal cruelty.
Yes.
But coming at that idea from completely different ways and understanding.
The woman, you know, the woman who was advocating for animals, best thing she said was about the animals having their throats cut, because of course, you know, no matter how, you know, what the welfare conditions are for animals on farms, that's what happens to them. And that's what we got to get down to say, well, look, you know, what I said to that rancher says, yes, but those animals are still killed, aren't they? And they're still killed at a fraction of what would be their natural lifespan. And how do you justify that when we don't need to eat them?
Well, we know the cultural response to your point is the fact that, but that's not cruel. Because
it's not, but it's not to do with it.
Well, it was all about cruelty, though, Ronnie.
Yeah, but this and that's the problem, that the kind of what is the fundamental wrong is never discussed, and it's not really properly discussed by the animal advocates. I mean, I've seen quite a few people on Piers Morgan, a few vegans, and I'm always frustrated at
talk about the fundamental wrong. Talk about the fundamental, and they never do, right?
They never talk about the fundamental wrong. Is that why are these animals being used? Why are these animals being exploited in the first place? Why are they being slaughtered when we don't need to do it? It has to be wrong. If we can live without doing it, then that's what we should. That's what we're morally obliged to do, right? And get them to answer that. You know, why do you want animals killed to feed you when that doesn't have to happen? How would you justify that, Piers Morgan, without looking like a total arsehole?
You see, what you're doing there, though, Ronnie, you're creating a critique of animal use. We don't do that in the movement. We do a critique of animal cruelty and abuse.
Yes.
And we never talk about the fundamental issue, which is the animal use and the rights violations that go along with it.
Yes.
And so that, you know, and tying it back in with the Viva thing, I mean, we did notice that there was an interesting claim within the Viva press release and the website and everything, which is that the pigs are gassed to death in Britain, whereas the actual pigs are stunned by the gassing, and then their throats are cut while unconscious. So that's the point. You see, that saying about they end up in slaughterhouses and they have their throats cut. That immediately makes the speciesist go, yeah, but in a non-cruel way. They're asleep by then.
Yeah, but you have to cut. It's the killing. You have to say, but they're killed. They're still killed, aren't they? You know, all these animals are being slaughtered when it's not necessary.
But that's not what we concentrate on. We talk about whether it's cruel or not.
Talk about the cruel, and the trouble is that then that kind of then the people who are the farmers or the people who want to continue consuming animal products start saying, well, yeah, but I'm against the cruelty, exactly as what happened there, and I want to get rid of the cruelty, and I want to kind of create this situation.
Yeah, which is why animal welfareism and cultural speciesism go hand in hand. Now, it is true, of course, that we as vegans try to change the conversation. So we would want to say, for example, I suppose, it's cruel to end someone's life before their time. But when speciesists think of the word cruel, they're thinking about pain, and they're thinking about kicking cats and dogs and this kind of stuff. That's a cultural construction of cruel, and so they don't think that other animals who are used for food are being kicked around the place, even though that does happen. But they also don't think that their throats are being cut while they're fully conscious. They think that they're unconscious, and so therefore the process is not cruel.
Well, and a lot of the time that they are unconscious, of course. Cruel is the wrong word. We have to talk about right and wrong. That it's wrong. How can you justify animals being slaughtered and being deliberately reared to be slaughtered at a fraction of their natural lifespan, when that is totally unnecessary for our survival and our well-being? How can you justify that? That is the spot that you put them on, and it's nothing. That isn't a conversation about cruelty.
No, well, I agree. I mean, I was shocked about 3 years ago, naming no names, but an influencer was on the TV talking to somebody who was a butcher but also had an abattoir, and they were talking about how they're unconscious by the time that they get killed. And the advocate was saying, yeah, but the stunning doesn't always work, does it? So they ended up with a big argument about the percentage of times that the stunning didn't work. And so therefore, what percentage was cruel and what percentage weren't? Totally irrelevant from an animal rights point of view. We're not talking about the fundamental wrong again.
It's relevant. I mean, I've had farmers invite me, come to my farm, and you'll see how well I treat the animals. I said, no, I don't.
We're not cruel. And for their point of view, they're not cruel. And not only that, they are opposed to cruelty. Those farmers will be
yes, they'll claim, you know, and I'll say, well, no, I don't need to come to your farm, because let me ask you something. Do you send those animals for slaughter? Well, yes, I do. I said, well, that's wrong, isn't it? That's what I'm opposed to, and that's wrong. And how do you justify it when it doesn't need to happen? It's nothing to do with the conditions you keep them in. I don't need to come to your farm to see how you keep the animals to decide what you're doing is wrong. You know, you see, so this is the problem, that we get diverted down this kind of wrong path, don't we? Really, by this talk about cruelty. Yes, I mean, there is cruelty. There is a lot of suffering associated with all this, but that isn't the fundamental wrong, and we have to talk about the fundamental wrong.
Well, the thing about it, I mean, take that setup of Piers Morgan, that woman, and then the advocate woman. The only person who's going to talk about the fundamental wrong is the vegan, but didn't.
She didn't. She alluded to it by talking about them having they still have their throats cut and they're still killed. She alluded to it, but
yeah, but the answer is already built into the other people's perspective, which is oh yeah, but there was no cruelty in
because that can still be done humanely because they're unconscious when that happens. Yes, of course. You see, this happens time and time again, and I've seen it time and time again on Piers Morgan. It's really, really frustrating, when you see this happen, with the vegans that are invited on there.
Well, I think it goes back to the fact that we're no longer used to talking about the fundamentals of the animal rights case, and so therefore we talk about the welfare elements. And I think that because we're by and large in a welfare movement, I think really the truth is that advocates are more comfortable talking about welfare than they are talking about rights. I've had that said to me directly. Well, people understand cruelty, whereas rights are a bit abstract.
Well, the thing is, I mean, but the idea of a fundamental wrong can be discussed in a sense without mentioning rights. Not that I'm opposed to talking about rights, but you can talk about the fundamental wrong by saying, yes, but those animals are still killed, aren't they? Their lives are still ended. They're still being exploited when we don't need to do that. And that's to be wrong, doesn't it? You can approach it from that point of view.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. And it's interesting because Francion's position has moved towards yours in a way, because he used to be, because he did a lot of work with Reagan, he used to be talking about animal rights a lot. And then he got to the stage where he says, well, look, we can talk about animal ethics without invoking the issue of rights. Now, whether the idea that rights was a little bit too complicated, I mean, he certainly thought that rights as an idea was too complicated for the animal rights movement in a deeply ironic way. And so maybe he thought that it was also a bit too complicated for journalists and for members of the public as well. And so therefore, I think he would agree with you. We can still talk about the fundamental wrong, but we don't have to talk about rights. Yeah, I would, of course, because I would still go back to Reagan myself. But
I think it depends who you're talking about. And yeah, I mean, I tend to be, I often call myself a wrongsist, really. In that I tend to kind of discuss wrongsists.
Wrongsists.
In that I'll talk about human behavior being wrong rather than, animals having rights. Although I'm, so totally accept they do have rights, that's not a problem to me. But about, surely it's wrong to do this because of so and so. That's kind of how I, how I approach it, really, in terms of the person's behavior.
Well, there is a famous Reagan title, which is animal rights and human wrongs.
And human wrongs, I concentrate more on the human wrongs, or perhaps on what's undesirable for humans to do. I mean,
you're Ronnie the wrongest. Is that what
Ronnie
you're saying?
the wrongsist? Yes, the wrong'un, Ronnie the wrong'un. Yeah. But I think that's it's that. But whether this is something recent or something that's always been the case, the cruelty thing, because of course, up to perhaps 25 years ago, the focus of campaigns was single issues, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think you're true. I think it's always been there. I mean, there's some early film of you talking about animal cruelty, for example.
But, I'm quite sure there. I'm quite sure.
Yeah, and there's bound to be of me, but it's to do with the prevalence of it. What we've got now is there always just be a blend of it, and the more kind of radical people, to put it that way, and obviously people like Cross and people like Watson. Cross in particular, he would talk about animal cruelty quite a bit, but it was always mixed in with ideas about, emancipation, oppression, liberation, those kind of things. And their favorite word was exploitation. And I know we can critique that nowadays, but that was their favorite word. whereas they would talk about cruelty. When you got to the 60s in the vegan society, there was a lot more talk about cruelty. But again, it wasn't exclusively about that. What we've got now, the difference that I've perceived is that it's almost become the only word used. Well, there's three: animal lover, animal abuse, and animal abuser, and then animal cruelty. And all the other stronger rights kind of leaning words, they're never mentioned anymore. So the ones that point to the fundamental wrong are not part of our language anymore. That seems to be that we're missing something.
Yes. I mean, I think the people that are using those words think those words do cover the fact that the animals are exploited, do cover the fact that the animals are slaughtered. And to them it means that, but of course it means something different to other people.
Yeah, but that's the problem is there's no point in being that culturally illiterate, because we've got to take into account what the culture will make of the language. And in some senses, it's their word. I mean, like cruelty and abuse, these are RSPCA words. They're not animal rights words. And like why we've kind of latched on to the welfare side of the language rather than the right side of the language is a mystery to me. And we don't even do what most people have done in the past, which is blend them together, right? We don't even do that anymore. We've separated them out and then chosen the welfare. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. But I think there's, there's an awful lot of confusion in that people will support a rights campaign and then the next minute support a welfarist campaign. It's like people think, well, as long as it's for the animals, I'm going to support it. And they don't seem to be able to differentiate between different campaigns. And you've even got organizations that claim to be rights organizations that, we believe in, we believe in animal rights. But the next minute they'll be doing a welfarist campaign.
Yeah, that invokes something that I think might come back into the movement. I don't know. I mean, it wasn't very popular, but in 1996, when Francis Young came up with the idea of new welfarist, what he meant was welfarists who stood for abolition. So that was separate from the traditional ones like the RSPCA, but they would do it through. They would go for abolition through welfare means. Now that's what we've got now, because there's a lot of advocates now that think, well, if we talk welfare and slap a vegan label onto it, that makes sense. Now, culturally, it doesn't make sense. In the vegan world, it does. In other words, if they say that's cruel, the next thing that they think is therefore go vegan. Now, culturally, that doesn't link up at all, right? Because what cruel means is we should do something about it and regulate it. Let's call
make it uncruel.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then to make it even worse, then you've got organizations in the abolitionist thing also complaining to the RSPCA that they're not doing their job properly.
Yes. And I think you've got organizations running welfarist campaigns because they see it as a means of making money, because if they campaign on a welfarist objective that they see as being achievable, of course, if they achieve that objective, then they can claim a victory, and then that leads to donations, doesn't it?
Well, there is a more fundamental question just on that, Ronnie, and this is uncomfortable, I think, for us. Are they doing welfare campaigns because they recognize or know even that most people in the animal rights movement are actually welfarists?
I think it's because I think it's to do with short-termism and the fact that people need to see some kind of victory. In other words, like if we persuaded a supermarket to no longer get their eggs from this particular place where the hens were kept in terrible conditions, and we did an expose on it, then that's a victory. Yeah, not taking into account that the supermarket's just going to get their eggs from another place that's probably just as bad and where the hens are still killed anyway.
Yeah,
see what I mean?
But Ronnie,
Yeah.
if the audience weren't welfareists, they would go, "Hang on, that's not a victory."
Well, I think
the fact that they cheer along.
Yeah, if the audience were a bit more kind of astute and sussed, but it's more to do with the victory. It's more to say, oh, they've achieved a victory. They've managed to get that supermarket to no
But as
longer.
you just pointed out, Ronnie, if you look at it in the round, it's not a victory. It's just
it's not a victory. No. It's not. It
moving
really isn't a
pieces around
victory,
it.
and a lot of things get proclaimed as victories that aren't victories when you look at the bigger picture. And this is the problem. And really the bigger picture is very, very simple, and that is we've got to educate loads more people to become vegan, and loads more vegans have got to become involved in that educational process, because it's only by, as you say,
I know I'm going to sound like a stuck record, but I'm going to come back to the fact that seeing the bigger picture is not hard for vegans, surely, and the fact that they don't must mean that they think as welfareists or something like that.
I think it's I think it's difficult for humans as a whole to see the big picture. I think it's difficult for humans as a whole to think at any sort of distance from what's immediately in front of them, and I think this has led to problems. It's a major cause of the climate crisis, because that's years ago, years in advance, we don't need to worry about it, and then it becomes too late. That people. People are kind of immediatist in their thinking. If I ran two fundraisers, one was for an animal sanctuary, and the other one was to provide funds for vegan outreach, which one would attract the most funds? I think we both know the answer to that. But which of those campaigns would spare the most animals from slaughter and indeed from suffering as well? It would be the outreach campaign. But
it's the visibility of it, though, Ronnie, isn't it?
And it's the immediatism. Oh, those animals are there now, and they need help now. But for the animals that are going to are going to be oppressed, exploited, and going to be slaughtered, because we failed to persuade people to become vegan. When that happens to them, that will be there now. That will be now for them, won't it? You see, but it's really difficult. People don't seem to have to kind of grasp this, kind of to look at things at a deeper level, or to look at anything at any kind of a distance, you see.
But let's us do that, though, in a sense that without victories, people are going to give up, aren't they? So they need them, don't they?
Well, I think people need to be educated about, about the true situation, and about kind of, looking at victories in a different way. I mean, every time someone's educated to become vegan, that's a victory, isn't it? I mean, that amounts to the sparing, certainly here in the UK, the sparing of almost 100 animals a year from slaughter. No, if we educate just one person to become vegan. And it's certain that, that the more vegan information we spread by whatever means, the more people are going to become vegan. Because
the problem, Ronnie, is that if you've got a butcher's shop with a closed sign on it, that's not the same as somebody you think might have gone vegan, but you don't know for sure.
Well, the thing is, but the butcher shop with a closed sign on it actually means nothing, because the reason why most butcher shops have closed.
But it's a visual victory, isn't it?
Yes, it's a visual victory. But the problem is we have to educate people to kind of think a bit deeper, and to kind of sort of overcome this needs for this kind of immediate kind of, sort of rush of this kind of, these victories that aren't really victories. You know what I mean? And that to kind of just be steadfast in realizing that the more vegan education we do, the more vegans we'll create, because that's the only way. That's why we've had an increase in the number of vegans, is simply because there's been more information out there promoting veganism.
Well, I think what a lot of people would say is that the vegan community is not really going up very much, and we all know that a lot of people do fall back off, right?
A lot of people, yes. I mean, a lot of people say they're vegan and then stop being so-called vegan, don't they? But I think if we look at it, over a longer time span, it's pretty obvious that, there are far more vegans now than when I first became vegan. And there's far more vegans around now than there were 20 years ago. Probably
but
10 years ago.
if you're forced to put it into percentages, what are you going to say?
Well, it's very difficult to know with percentages because, of course, these things are obtained by opinion polls, and it depends what the questions are, what questions are asked, and it depends on whether people are honest in. But you see, you wouldn't have the amount of products in the shops that are suitable for vegans, and you wouldn't have all the options in eating places that are suitable for vegans unless there were a lot more people wanting to consume those things. That doesn't mean that those people are all ethical vegans, but it certainly means that there's been a big increase.
But they're precisely those that group of people who would create that demand that you're talking about. They're precisely the ones who can go pretty wobbly pretty quick.
Yeah, I think they can, but you see, but there's obviously sort of far more of those people than there used to be, and and that is a step in the right direction. When we think that the kind of the one thing that causes the most harm in the world in terms of suffering and slaughter and everything is the consumption of animal products, isn't it? Both to the animals that are directly oppressed and exploited, and the harm that causes to the natural environment and to the animals that live within that environment. It's hugely the greatest cause of harm on the planet. So even if people just, and if we get persuade people to stop consuming animal products, then that's a huge step forward.
Yeah, mind Mendy's saying that the population has increased too. Of course, Cranky will say that, right?
Yeah.
We kind of can't keep up.
No, I mean, yes, I think that what's happened is that, the amount of animal products being consumed in the world is increasing. And I think two reasons for that. I think firstly, increasing population, but secondly, because there are countries that traditionally, mainly ate plant food that are now adopting a kind of more Western diet, and they're consuming more animal products. And I think it's those two things together. But without vegan education, that situation would be far worse than it is now. Okay, so it's there's been an increase in the consumption of animal products. That increase would have been far greater without vegan education. But we haven't turned it round yet. We haven't turned the situation round, and to create a situation.
Do you think, Ronnie? Do you really think that the bottom line is that there are a lot of pessimists rather than optimists, and so they think well?
I think it. I mean, I just think that it's not really a case of optimism or pessimism, but looking at kind of if we are going to turn this situation round, if we are going to create a world where we are going to move away from oppression and exploitation in of other animals, indeed of humans as well, then what do we need to do that? What do we need to do to achieve that? And we need to just go for that. We need to figure out what we need to do and just go for that, because what else can we do? And for me, the main thing we have to do in order to achieve that is vegan outreach, vegan education. And we just have to go for it. And we just have to try and do that as much as we possibly can in whatever way we can, in whatever time we can devote to it and energy we can devote for it, and just go for it. Because what else are we going to do with our lives? Are we going to spend our lives doing something that's kind of doesn't mean anything? Or are we going to do the most meaningful thing we can do in our lives, which I believe is vegan education?
And focus on the fundamental wrong. Now, this is a common argument. The government guarantees this. So this is like even if the demand goes down, there'll be.
Well, you see, I think this is. I don't agree that I don't really agree with that. This is talking about.
But it's true in the short term, isn't it?
Well, this is talking about subsidies, right? And that, but you see, from, looked into subsidies and what subsidies actually do. Subsidies don't actually do this. What subsidies do is they lower they artificially lower the price of animal products. That's the effect of the subsidies, right? So that means it makes it harder to persuade someone to adopt a vegan diet because the price of animal products are artificially low. But if you do succeed in persuading someone to adopt a vegan diet, that does have an effect. It just makes our job more difficult. It doesn't mean that turning people vegan doesn't work. It just means it makes it more difficult to do that. The effect of the subsidies is to lower the prices of animal products. That's the effect of subsidies. Because if you look at it this way, if no one consumed animal products, would they still be slaughtering all these animals? No, of course they wouldn't. So, like between the situation now and the situation no one consuming animal products, there's bound to be a reduction in the slaughter of animals and the use of animals for food, to coincide.
That's why I said about the short term. My view on this is that they would try to do this, and then we'll still carry on slaughtering them, put them into deep freeze and all that. But that can't last for very long.
Even if that is happening, I mean, there are going to be animals killed and stored for like use to kind of provide for future demand, and that is going to happen. But that can't happen, as you say. That can't go on indefinitely when no one wants to consume those products. They're not going to keep doing it. So educating people to become vegan is effective, and the other way it's effective is in terms of politics, because if you educate people to become vegan in terms of, especially in terms of the proper meaning of vegan, which is to be opposed to the exploitation and oppression of animals, then that's going to be reflected in the way those people behave politically. And the more vegans we create, the more vegan politicians we'll create, and the more vegans we have to vote for those politicians. So it's going to eventually have an effect in the way the administration operates. And so
another political effect would be the fact that a more and more vegan friendly world would start to, if you do have a government who is stockpiling all these animal products that nobody wants, then there'll be pressure because that's going to be using taxpayers' money.
Yes.
So the more kind of vegan friendly the society is, the more critique they're going to be used about that particular use of taxpayers' money, surely, right?
Well, yes, and you're going to have a change in subsidies, aren't you? Instead of subsidizing animal products, the subsidies will go towards, moving the agricultural system towards a plant-based one, won't it? And to, into encouraging the consumption of
What do you make of this, Ronnie? I worked in the supply chain for 10 plus years. The subsidies argument is something the movement uses a lot. However, subsidies were turned on their heads in the 1990s. I don't know geographically where we're talking about. It's not so much a subsidy, it's contractual. And so this is the end of that contractual obligation by a government. Yeah, again, you see, that can't be indefinite, can it, surely?
Yeah. But they protect the producers by enabling them to sell their products more easily because of the
but I mean essentially they're buying stuff that nobody wants, aren't they? They're buying it up, right? And how long can
even
they do
if
that
they were
for?
doing that, there is, as you say, there is a limitation to that. There is a limitation to that. And so you kind of, if you need to reach a certain number of vegans to kind of put an end to it, then the only way you do that is through vegan education anyway. So whatever the situation.
But then again, Ronnie, if you've got like say in Britain or in the Republicans in North America, they're so hand in hand with business, they would probably bail them out for 40 years if they could. So it could be a long time, but it can't go on forever, can it? Whoops, we might have We might have lost our Ronnie, I think.
And someone to go vegan makes no difference. I would say to them, well, yeah, but why are you vegan then? Why are you vegan if you think it makes no difference? They obviously do, because they are.
No, I think they're pointing to a structural support system that the government.
Yes, a structural support. But you see that at the end of the day, that structure is created and held together by individuals, and how people behave morally and ethically as individuals, or don't behave morally and ethically as individuals, isn't it? Like a government is made up of individuals working together. The system is,
quite often they've got a shared ideology.
They've got a shared ideology, but that comes from, that's because they as individuals decided to kind of buy into that ideology, isn't it? I mean, we've got a shared ideology in many ways, but that's because as individuals we've become vegan and decided.
Don't be saying that. I disagree with just about everything you're ever saying.
Yeah, but but you know what I mean. So if we're gonna, everything comes from individual change, really. System change, cultural change comes from individual change, and system change, comes from cultural change. Which comes from
it can do. I think what this point is saying is that there's a kind of lag. So the structure will bail out these things. So as individuals change,
that's right. But you see, if we're going to change that, how do we change that structure? Right. That structure is put together and it's supported by people as individuals working together, isn't it? Like, say, for instance, it's a government policy to maintain that structure. Then that's down to the government, and that's down to the members of parliament who are elected to form that government. So you get members of parliament elected who have a completely different viewpoint, so have a vegan viewpoint. Then they're going to dismantle that structure, aren't they? And they're going to put a different structure in its place. So how do we get those people? And the only way you get those people is by creating more vegans. So if we're going to do anything about that, if there is a problem with the structure like that, how are we going to deal with that?
I obviously understand the political point. I think the thing that worries me a little bit is if you look at the history of Britain from Blair onwards, I suppose. Essentially, even the left-wing parties, so-called, have got to kind of move right into the centre in order to become electable, and even then they're on shaky ground all the time.
But that's because that's because of the views of the voters. The governments are voted in by ordinary people, going down the ballot box and putting X against a certain name, or sending in the postal vote with an X against a certain name, aren't they?
And they're all right wing.
That individual person's decision on who to vote for. You change the way individual people think, and they're going to vote differently, aren't they? Then this is the thing. At the end of the day, it's all down to people's, what people's views, are as individuals. That's all there is, really.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I do worry that we see it in our own movement. I don't think people are perhaps as political as they once were, but that could just be me and my rose-tinted glasses. So let's hope that's true. That it's just me.
I think I think kind of what happened was that it's kind of in the early days. You're talking about vegans. I think because it was so much more difficult to kind of live as a vegan, that the only people that kind of undertook to do so were people that were very highly committed. So therefore, those people were more likely to be politicized, and sort of politicized in the right way, because they were highly committed people. But you see, now that it's kind of so easy to operate in society as a vegan, that has become much less the case. And it's also like kind of, in a sense, veganism now, I think, has become very much like vegetarianism used to be, in that, go back to the kind of, in the 1970s, 1980s, the rise of the animal rights movement in the 1970s, that, there was this kind of upsurge in veganism in the 70s as well. that if you asked a vegan, kind of, describe yourself, that person would very right, the first word they say is, right, I'm a vegan, I'm a vegan, I'm a, I'm an artist, I'm a father, vegan would be pretty much the first thing they said, right? You ask that of a lot of vegans today, and vegan isn't the first thing they'd say. It's somewhere way down the list. It's like, oh yes, I happen to be a vegan, because like it's so easy to just kind of live as a vegan. I just happen to be vegan. And that's rather like people like, back in the day would say about being a vegetarian. There's like a lot of people that would just, oh yeah, I'm a vegetarian, but like that's kind of not the first thing I'm going to say about myself. And I think that's what's happened, and I think that's maybe a reason why people aren't so kind of politically politically aware or kind of interested in politics now.
Yeah, that's pretty deep. Amateurs talk strategy, experts talk logistics. Yeah, well,
isn't logistics is about transport?
Well, it's just the kind of practicalities of it, but it's kind of like the art of the doable. So it's all very well to have all the kind of airy fairy kind of ideas, especially can they be done or not?
But you see, it's kind of I think it's all quite. I don't think we should make things kind of more complicated than we need to. In other words, like I was saying, back when we talk about the fundamental wrong, the argument for not using animals for food is like really simple. It's like we don't need to, so why are we doing it? Isn't it? It's like really simple. We don't have to talk about cruelty at all. It's about like why are we doing this to these animals, slaughtering this massive number of animals? We don't need to do it. Surely it's better not to do it, isn't it? Isn't that the correct, proper moral choice of a decent?
Well, yeah, but then when they say, well, why shouldn't we do it? That's when you've got the choice of, well, it's not right or it's cruel.
And no, it's because it's obviously not right. You justify to me why you're causing all these animals to be slaughtered when you don't need to do it. You justify that if you think yourself as any kind of decent person.
But you see, the point is, Ronnie, we already know that if you've got that choice of it's not right or it's cruel, most animal advocates now would go for the cruel.
But that's that's a mistake, as we saw an example of how that's a mistake. Was shown in that clip from Piers Morgan, wasn't it? Because they went down that road. They went down the cruel road. They kind of weren't able to really get anywhere with it. But you see, once again, going back to what's simple. It's simple, like kind of, if we're ever going to change society at a fundamental level, we have to educate people as individuals to have different attitudes. That's the only way to do it. That's the only way to do it. How is it going to happen otherwise? All right, there's lots of different means of kind of doing that education, but that is what fundamentally needs to be done. There isn't another way.
I think we're being accused of skipping something here, but we are going to be skipping everything actually because we're out of time. So we're almost coming to 2 hours, Ronnie. We've gone and done it again.
Yeah, I mean supply depends on demand, doesn't it? What we're thinking of doing is is reducing and eventually ending the demand for animal products, but also changing the way that's just as important. Changing the way people think, changing the way people behave.
Well, I mean that's bound to be the fundamental, because people think as cultural speciesists, and not only do they think like that, those values are transmitted generationally, and so we've got generation after generation after generation of cultural speciesists, which has also got animal welfare built in, which is why it can be quite confusing to talk about animal cruelty, because they already understand about animal cruelty and they're against it. And so when you then align animal cruelty with veganism, that is confusing for them. You might as well, if you're going to confuse them or kind of like put them into a difficult situation, as it were, you might as well talk about what we want to say, which is, okay, well, we're actually opposed to animal use. What do you think of that idea? Rather than let's have a big fight about what cruelty means and stuff.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's kind of, as I said, it has been frustrating watching Piers Morgan with all this like kind of whole, this kind of never-ending supply of vegans that go on his program, and very rarely say the most important thing they need to say.
Yeah, we were both asked earlier on in the chat whether we would go on. I think I'd be wary, but probably willing to do it. I don't know about you. I mean,
I'd go on and say to him what I've said now and see what he says.
I mean, everybody knows.
I mean, he might say, "Well, I just don't care," and I'd say, "Well, that says a lot about you, doesn't it?" He might say, "Well, I don't give a shit about the animals being killed." He might, but then that, what does that make him look like? That's the thing. You can't, he probably would.
And you're going to say, does that mean you're not an animal lover? What's the matter with you?
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly.
Right, people. I think this is a good moment, as they say in court. Pleasure to have your company again, Ronnie. See, I said that with a straight face. And
yes.
And so we shall be back in 2 weeks, I think, is the schedule.
Yeah, it normally is. I mean, we've had a new show this evening. It might be one of our other shows on a particular topic next time. We'll just have to see.
We shall see. Yeah,
we'll let everyone know. But thanks for everyone for tuning in, and also thanks to the people that are watching the recording when it's shared as well.
Yeah, so we'll make a date with you people in 2 weeks' time, providing, Ronnie,
we are both still alive.